Nigel Farage has demanded an apology from Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch after she accused his Reform UK party of faking its membership numbers. Ms Badenoch alleges that the digital counter on the Reform UK website was actually rigged to tick up automatically, as it now shows, of course, that the party has more members than the Tories. Mr Farage has refused to rule out legal action after this claim, as multiple investigations by UK media sources, some of them pretty hostile to reform, have now seemed to verify the figures. Now, this comes as he today hailed Elon Musk an absolute hero figure, vowing he will help reform win over young voters ahead of the next election. Well, let's see what my panel make of this. The former Labour Party official, Halima Khan, and the writer and political commentator, Benedict Spence. Halima, can I start with you? To what extent do you think that this is just doing a marvellous free PR job for Nigel Farage?
Well, I think that, to be honest, I think that the dispute between Kemi and Farage is just smokescreen. What they're really disputing for is actually just other investors that would invest in a political party. For example, with the fact that Farage's party has grown bigger than the Conservative Party, that's a signal to investors and foreign investors to go and invest in the party as a viable investment. Where we're seeing the conversations about Elon Musk investing in the party, it's quite a clear smoke signal that what the spat is about is more about whether or not other people will be less interested in invest in the Conservative Party now that Farage has had so much success. I think the fact that they're both squabbling when they're supposed to be in opposition to Keir Starmer, where they're spending more time attacking each other than the government, is quite a shame, actually, to be honest.
Benedict, I don't know about you, but I've been quite impressed by the fact of the matter is, right, they've got 5 MPs, yet the level of opposition that they've been providing as far as Rupert Lowe's inundation of questions and things like that has been quite impressive for the size of the rump of the political party.
Yeah, I mean, they're able to, I think, cut through quite a lot. In many ways, because they're such a small party, there's far more attention placed on the individuals. It's far easier, I suppose, to identify the 5 if that's only what you're going on. I mean, the reality is Nigel Farage is sort of talking up the idea of potentially being the real opposition, which, of course, numerically they're not. But in terms of trajectory, it's very impressive what they've managed to achieve in a relatively short space of time. And, of course, they came second in 100-odd seats of the last general election and are sort of within touching distance of Labour and the Conservatives in great swathes of the country. The problem is they are still a very small and very vulnerable party. As much as we're talking up how well they're doing and potential investments from overseas and domestically and the number of members they have, they're still in a very sort of nascent period where it could all go horribly wrong. And the Conservatives are, you know, whether or not they're in a bit of a crisis mode, they are still historically one of the oldest and most successful political parties in the world. There is a lot of vested interest in the survival of that party, no matter how well Reform are doing.
But do you not think they might have said that about the Liberal Party at one point?
Once upon a time, yes. But the Conservatives, of course, outlasted the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
That's who they were going up against. This is sort of intergenerational we're talking about here. The problem is neither of these parties can actually survive and succeed whilst the other one is alive. And that's the key thing here, is that Farage, he does need the Tory party to die if he's going to be the true opposition, and vice versa. There isn't going to be a coalition on the right. You know, I think, quite apart from the fact that Reform exists because people are irritated with the Tories and they would see that as a betrayal if Nigel Farage then did a deal, there are people within the Conservative Party who would rather lose a general election than see Nigel Farage in government. So you're going to see a lot of this kind of sniping at each other, a lot of the sort of the backstabbing. And the key thing about all of this is, I think it shows that Kemi is actually quite a weak leader. She took the bait in, you know, this was a cheap stunt that was done, and she took the bait in saying, it's not true, it's fraud, whatever, without having evidence to back it up. So she's now in a situation where either she's going to apologise or she's going to be made to apologise. Either way, 7 weeks in, the leader of the Conservative Party having to kowtow to the leader of Reform, that's an incredibly embarrassing situation.
I mean, Halima, I can't see her apologising, to be honest, can you?
Well, I don't. Again, going back to the point that I made earlier, I don't think that they will. I don't think Kemi Badenoch is going to apologise. I think Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch's relationship is quite peculiar and interesting because both of them built a career just talking about immigration and one thing only, just immigration. Beyond that, what are their policies? What do they actually stand for? They don't really have.
But do you think in the Red Wall, though, that it's not just the Tories, right? Labour ought to be a bit conscious of reform as well?
Absolutely. I think Labour are terrified at the moment because, you know, it's no secret that they're a minority government. I think that the fact that only half the UK population voted in the last general election is a clear signal that there is an appetite in the general public for something new, that they've just completely feel betrayed by the duopoly of the Tory Labour, that they are looking for something that's completely new, and I think they would be looking towards reform as being that new.
That's interesting from a former Labourer.
Yeah, in many ways, actually, the lack of policies is helping reform right now because it means there's less to scrutinise them on. And
it's not helping Kemi. She ain't got any either.
But that's because they are the party that left everything in such a bad situation.
True.
Everything that Labour comes out with and people go, the Labour's not doing very well on this or we dislike their policy, Labour can turn around and go, well, show us your track record. Wasn't it magnificent? Whereas reform, in many ways, actually, at the last general election, Labour weren't held quite to the same degree of scrutiny as the Tories were by much of the mainstream press. Because it was easy and fun to go after the Tories because they were rubbish. And everybody assumed that Labour were going to get in. So no journalist really wanted to burn their bridges with Labour Party insiders before they even got in. But now, of course, that they are in and we have all the stories about Lord Ali and all that sort of stuff, suddenly people are starting to pay attention. And it's going to be a very elongated process. It's going to be 5 years of this. Meanwhile, Reform have just got to sit there and go, well, we're not Labour and we're not the Tories. And people will go, well, that sounds refreshing. Actually, I quite like that. And they can take the time to slowly build up policies by also looking at what Labour try and what doesn't work.
Well, Leakey has commented on our Your Say, Helena, and says Reform have taken 4 council seats from Labour. The Conservatives have actually taken 18. So are we overblowing the whole Reform saga, I guess, the impact of Reform?
I think, you know, the people that have been voting Reform aren't so much in tune with local politics anyways. You know, I come from a background who I was very an apathetic voter. I voted in general elections, not so much local elections. So I think that there is a lack of political education generally across the board in this country. So I do think it statistically shows that less people vote in local elections than general elections anyways. So I think that that has helped Conservatives because you have to be really aware of local elections to go out and vote. You're not nationally informed like a general election.
What's your opinion on Elon Musk?
So I think, again, Elon Musk it's funny, I think, that Nigel Farage holds him so highly because...
Do you think with young people, though, he cuts through?
No, absolutely no. I think that, Elon Musk... Nigel Farage holds him so highly, but Elon Musk is everything that Farage claims to be against. You know, he is an economic migrant who travelled to America, and he is now actually in a lot of fire with the Republican Party based on his comments about Indian immigration. He also has a transgender daughter. So these are all things that Nigel Farage says that he's diametrically opposed, but he likes the money that Elon Musk has to offer.
Well, and I think if Nigel were here, he would say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not against, those with skills that were coming here.
Yeah.
A few years ago, he was arguing that we should take in Syrians, remember, during the 2015 election.
Yeah, his position on migration can be very fluid, and that's a useful thing when you're a politician, to be able to dovetail and for people to not necessarily be able to hold you to account for it. But this is something, certainly in America, we, as you point out, we're seeing now with the Republican Party, haven't even actually got into power yet.
Yes.
They're already scrapping with each other. It's a problem that Reform will have down the line, which is that their ideology is, I don't think, very secure. It's simply a question of people are very discontented. But this is a problem that both Labour and the Tories have had as well. It's very difficult to nail down what people are. Are they sort of globalists? Are they pro-free market? Or actually are they quite sort of insular in their view of what the state should do, what it should provide? This is something that Reform will have to contend with later on. But when it comes to Elon Musk, he's somebody who, whatever you think of his politics, he gets things done.
Yeah.
He achieves. And in a country like this, where growth is sclerotic, where police don't turn up, where things don't work, people like the idea of a businessman who goes, I can just do things, and they happen.
And on that point, do you think the comparison between the United States under Trump and Musk, part of that administration, and the Labour government with, as you describe it, that anemic, sclerotic growth, that actually the comparisons between the two are going to get more fierce.
Well, I think when I was working in the Labour Party, as Keir Starmer came in and Biden administration came in, they were very, very happy. As we are seeing where Trump and Musk both dislike Keir Starmer, I do think that there is a lot of nervousness going on within the Labour Party and how that will spill over into British politics. I think that we'd be naive to think that it doesn't spill over. For the last 2 decades, American politics has spilled over into the UK. I'm against all kinds of foreign investors in British politics. You know, that's the bottom line. I think that with the point that you made about globalists' agendas and whether or not Nigel Farage will fall into those traps, well, you know, Elon Musk isn't really against digital IDs. Digital IDs is the hill that I will happily die on. And it's coming in within a couple of weeks. We don't see Kemi or Nigel talking about it. So I think that that is the big test, whether there's going to be any kind of opposition to digital IDs coming in or not.
It is sort of like digital IDs with a shrug of the shoulders are just coming.
And this is also why I think it's curious as to why it is that so many people have such visceral reactions to Elon Musk in this country. Elon Musk, I don't think, is quite as ideologically set as many people think. And I think he's at the forefront of this because he was the person that decided, right, I'm going to help get this man elected because he's going to be good for business. But we forget, actually, that Mark Zuckerberg has also made a rather interesting shift to the right, as has Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
You know, this is not a one-off kind of thing. It is a direction that many people in Silicon Valley are travelling. And partly it's for ideology, of course it is, but partly it's also because they think, right, what party is going to suit us best to actually match our goals? And talking about, you know, what the future of the world is going to be, sort of more atomised societies, much more online. I mean, for heaven's sake, these are people who view AI basically as the future of everything and space exploration as the future of humanity. Of course, they're going to be thinking far more broadly beyond ideas about, you know, potholes or things like these. That's the other thing, actually, about the subject of Musk and Trump and the visas in the US, the highly skilled visas. Many people in Silicon Valley actually look at this as a bit of a misnomer because they think that a lot of these jobs aren't going to exist in the next 5 years anyway. They don't see what the fuss is because they think that the very technology that they're going to be bringing these people into work on is going to put those people out of a job. Now, think about that, the disconnect that that must have with middle America, with the Rust Belt, with the sort of, you know, the J.D. Vance sort of background.
Yes.
How that's going to impact. And we haven't even begun to have that conversation in this country because we don't have that kind of industry, because we don't have any growth. So,
I mean, the idea of reform and Musk and forming that axis, is your concern that actually this foreign intervention, as you put it, would actually mean that actually the British public are the ones that are forgotten about in that equation?
Absolutely, and I think that's what's been happening for decades now, since the first time Blair came in.
Not just in reform?
No, this is across the board with, you know, even how Boris handled the pandemic and Brexit. I think British people have generally been put on the back foot, depending on, you know, who's investing on which politician. You know, we are obviously going to be put on the back foot if their investors are foreign. So I think that, you know, one of the biggest concerns that align with the British farmers is actually whether or not our food is going to come in from America. So having American investors in British politics will only fast-track things that British people are very concerned with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people did notice that Bill Gates was at number 10. I keep seeing that on my feed.
Yeah, they did, and this would be a mistake, I'm afraid. Nigel Farage, very pro-free market, lots of people in his party are. You can't necessarily go against what the voters want, and a lot of people are increasingly anti-free market.
That's true.
This is something they need to square.
Well, I mean, they say the same thing about the MAGA movement, you know, and then look at that now.